Does evil and tragedy and just absolute awful things happening in people's lives prove that God does not exist? That's the question we'll be exploring today. Hi, I'm Tim Kaiser. This is Solo Melodica. Thank you for joining me today. If this is your first time, thanks for stopping by. If you are a repeat visitor, thanks for coming back. And if you are a subscriber, thank you for your partnership in this channel. Typically, we listen to music videos and react and reflect on the music lyrically, looking for a glimmer of God and redemptive qualities in the gift that is music. We've been going on a slow journey through some of the comments to the videos, and people are responding and asking questions about the Bible and God and things of that nature. And one of the common comments we receive talks about the existence of God and suffering or evil in the world. And there's people who believe that the proof that God does not exist is when you look at the world and see how awful and tragic it can be. So we're going to talk about that for a minute today. Previously, we've talked about different reasons why I believe God exists, and we covered several different arguments. We covered the cosmological argument, we covered the teleological argument, the fine-tuning of the universe. We covered the moral argument, the objective truth, right and wrong, the biblical argument that the Bible is a sound historical document written by eyewitnesses in the time of other eyewitnesses, has survived the scrutiny of textual criticism. The prophetic argument, because there are hundreds of messianic prophecies in the Bible that have come to pass, that they are historically proven, and the odds of this actually happening are astronomical. So today's argument's a little different. So in this capacity, the proof of evil and suffering in the world, does that prove that God does not exist? Personally, I believe that evil and suffering in the world and the existence of God are compatible. I really do. There are usually two different reasons why people think this. One is an intellectual reason. They just can't compute here. And the other is an emotional reason that can't compute here in our hearts. I'll tell you a story that's a tragic story that happened in my family. This is back in February of 1999 in the middle of the night. I had a cousin, her husband, and their 4 children all were killed in a house fire. And one night I had an aunt who woke up who no longer had a son-in-law, a daughter, or all her grandkids were killed in one evening. And you better believe the next day, 2 days, 3 days, as our families just grappled with this whole concept of suffering and evil and tragedy in our lives. And I'm raised in a Christian home, right? Christian family, preachers and missionaries and pastors and things of that nature. And those kind of things that happen, they are difficult. Tragedy is hard for us to process in our brain, and we ask why. But today I'm going to talk primarily about the intellectual reason. Does the existence of evil and suffering in the world disprove the existence of God? And we can look at it a couple different ways. Is it impossible for God to exist with suffering and evil in the world, or is it improbable? A couple different things there. But here's what's different. So I told you about the cosmological, teleological, the ontological, the moral, the biblical, the prophetic, all these different things that I used and people way smarter than me have used to say that the existence of God is more likely than not. In this case, it's atheists, or those who do not believe in God, saying, I don't believe in God, so prove this to me. So here in this capacity, we're going to toss the burden of proof over into those who say it's impossible. Now, it's not a hey, I'm taking the easy way out. I've already talked about 5 or 6 different ways why. I just happen to believe that it's possible for God to exist in a world that's full of suffering or has suffering. I mean, it's not full of suffering. We have a lot of suffering, trust me. but 99% of my day is not in suffering. Just a small portion of it is. And there are tragic events that happen, seriously tragic events that happen. And, we've talked in the past about Rwanda and the genocide. We talked about wars and things of that nature, the Holocaust and Pol Pot and these dictators who have just massacred their own people. Why is a different question. That's for a different day. But I happen to believe this, and I'm not trying to make an excuse or anything. I believe that God has given us a free will. When He created us in a manner in which He wants us to have a relationship with Him based on our own desire to do so. He doesn't force us to love Him, doesn't force us to go to church, be a part of the church or any of that nature. It doesn't force us to believe in Him, because there are some extremely intelligent people in the world who do not believe in God. He doesn't force that. So we have free will, and we make choices that can have a tendency to have repercussions, and a lot of the tragedy and the suffering is born out of that. And it's difficult, it's challenging, I get it, but I happen to believe that this is the case, and they're not incompatible. So the people who believe that God can't exist, if there's that, we have small amounts of, say, discomfort or suffering in our lives that aren't like, oh my God, someone died because a tree fell on their head. It's things like working out, exercising is not easy, and there's stress on our bodies, and there's a little bit of suffering involved. Going to the dentist and having your teeth scraped and your gums bleed. It's not as though we try to live a life full of all pain-free life existence. Kind of like the book Brave New World. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that book or not, or the great song by Iron Maiden is about that book, where life becomes just so easy, and all pain and agony and stress is removed. It's almost like if my children are a little on the younger side. Hunger Games was popular when they were a few years back, and it's like the district where the capital was. Their life was just full of ease and pleasure, and there was no challenges or stress. It's almost like sometimes we want our life to be like Brave New World or the capital and the Hunger Games. And that's just not how life is. And even just small parts of our life, it's kind of like a story. How boring would a story be if we say, oh, a guy wanted to climb the mountain, and he climbed the mountain in 5 minutes, and he got to the top, and everything was easy, there was no problems. Our whole lives are kind of like, we want something bad happens, we overcome it. We want something bad happens, and we overcome it. And that's just kind of how life is. Could God have made it a different way? I guess He could have. But if He gives us free will, and we're the reason and the cause for the really bad things that happen in our lives, and God's just like, let's deal with it, but we can overcome it. So I believe there's a hope. I believe we're not just crossing our fingers and hoping that life gets better. I believe that we do have a future and a hope in heaven. And I do believe that the existence of God and suffering and evil and pain and agony are compatible. They are compatible. So if you are one who believes otherwise, I get it. I get it. Hey, I talked about my cousin who died in that fire. That makes things really challenging. But in the next video, we'll talk about why some of the stuff may be allowed. All I'm asking today is that we believe that the existence of God, evil, suffering, and pain are compatible. Just because we don't think, our brain can't wrap around the idea that, oh my God, how could God do this? Does not really mean that God does not exist. So thank you for listening today. Come back again soon with a new video. Until then, may the peace of God, the grace of God overwhelm you, overtake you, and may your life be filled with the joy unspeakable and full of glory. Have a great day.